Our topic today is driver's appreciation. Did you get to attend any of those fun barbecues everyone's throwing this week?
Oh, God, I'm on the road. How can I attend the barbecue if I'm on the road?
You're listening to Cents Per Mile with your host, Charles Gracey, and his co-host, Paul Gibson. Today's guests are Skip Lawrence and Dave Abel. They'll be tackling tough industry topics, asking even tougher questions, all to find better solutions to help make sense make sense.
Welcome to Cents Per Mile, and I'm your host, Charles Gracey.
And I'm your co-host, Paul Gibson.
Well, on today's episode, we're talking about driver's appreciation.
Driver Appreciation Week.
What's your thoughts about this?
My thoughts? Oh, man. We're just going to get in hot. We're just already going to start making people mad right off the bat. So here's my thing. So I was a recruiting marketing manager for about 5 years, and I've been, just making better videos for the industry that drivers actually don't feel like they've wasted part of their time to make. So I'm a huge advocate, and my whole thing with Driver Appreciation Week is, once you get into it, like, it does give you the warm and fuzzies when you work at a company, but also at the same time, when you go on the internet, you see these drivers, the most popular meme, maybe we can put it up on the screen if you're someone who's watching on video, but the most popular meme is the variation of that Truck Drivers Appreciation Week, where the office employees eat barbecue while the drivers are out on the road. It's one of those things where it's like, it's kind of like when the pandemic hit. Like, everybody wanted to call truck drivers heroes, but, it's like, I even made a short film for CDL Life, and the driver who I followed through the pandemic and rode with him in the truck to see, drivers standing in drive-through lines and stuff like that. The ending line, he said, it just really still resonates to me this day. If we're heroes today, then we better damn well be heroes tomorrow. And it's one of those things where it's like, you have this week, but then and obviously when you work on the back end, I get it. It's a job. It's monotony. But things just start to feel monotonous. And it's like you take this 1 week to be like, oh, hey, man, we've been working together this whole time. I just want to let you know you're doing a good job. But it's like to the driver who's stuck out on the road, like, they've still got to keep moving. You can't say, hey, come have barbecue and just hang out when you're also saying, hey, if your wheels aren't moving, you're not making money. So, hey, do you want to, I want to appreciate you by giving you a cheeseburger. Do you want to not make money to come eat this cheeseburger? But also, it's a job, right. Your goal is to make a living. And if you can't live the type of living you're trying to make, then what the hell are you doing? So it's like a lot of it, I feel, feels sort of superficial. Like, what is anybody doing for the drivers who can't make it in? And you can't realistically bring in all your drivers. So it seems very selective, and almost in a way to where it could more or less reward the underperformers who are just hanging out in the yard. Like, if you got a person out there who, those people who, despite how ridiculous hours of service has gotten, you have someone out there that is, breaking 3,000 miles every week. Like, whatever you're offering isn't going to be worth it, but you still want to thank that person. You need to figure out more ways to actually thank that person.
Well, and that's why I was excited to have this conversation with you today, of all people. My take on it is much to the same points as you mentioned, but that 3,000 mile a week driver is not going to be the one in the yard having the cheeseburger. He's going to be out on the road, wheels turning and earning. That's how they make those miles and how they make their money. So when I'm thinking Driver's Appreciation Week, I'm thinking, how do you incorporate this to everyone? Not just the people at the yard, not just the experienced drivers that have been with the company, but the new drivers coming in, and to build that excitement all around. And I think as an industry, we often lose sight of this. I think finding ways to go around and be innovative and be that disruptive force that's going to be doing something different, I think that's what we're needing right now. I think, honestly, I think we need more people to think outside the box on how we're actually going to give thanks and how that thanks is being perceived by the receiving parties.
Yeah. Well, and so one thing that I think to manage to have any friends inside of the industry, having half the views that I do, being someone who, loves drivers, but in their head quits transportation twice a week because of several different things. Because that, and I think that kind of goes to a lot of what we're, the future of this podcast and what we're trying to do is that everybody says, oh, this is the way it's always been. This is just how we do it. And then you have this whole crew of people that are like, you can't just do things because people say it's the way it's always been. But when that happens, people like to complain, but no one has solutions. And I think one thing we should probably do, because I'm sure we both have ideas, and I'll let you go first, on ideas of what that looks like. So not to just rag on everybody who happens to be listening or watching. We're not just total jerks. Like, what do you see, especially because you spent time as a driver, you spent time recruiting, like on the company side now doing, obviously, hot seat. Like, what in your opinion are some ways that carriers could effectively do things on Driver Appreciation Week that could collectively show appreciation beyond what's become stereotypical?
So besides the day-to-day stuff, that I think Drivers Appreciation Week should be all year long. I don't think it should just be captured in 1 week. I think that's a shortcoming that we've, as an industry, normalized. But outside of that, if we're focused on this 1 week, one of the most meaningful things that someone did for me was actually one of the lowest cost things someone could have done. I remember getting a message that had how many miles I've driven, how many loads I've delivered, my length of time with the company, and the amount of money that I made as a driver for the company in that period of time. And that means someone took the time to pull that data and present it to me in a way to say thanks. It wasn't as simple as sending a Qualcomm message to 1,000 people saying thank you. That didn't take that long. There wasn't that much emotion behind it. There wasn't that much thought behind it. I mean, overall, optics matter, and when you're a driver and you're sitting in that driver's seat, showing that someone took that time to personalize it to me and my time and my contribution, that actually resonated with me for a long time, to this day. Also, just considering that they're away from their families. So often we're thanking the drivers, but what about the people that make it happen for the driver? I wouldn't have been able to do what I did without the support of my wife and my family. And I have a very memorable story that came from this. I was out for 2 months. My wife moved the house all by herself. I was supposed to be home. I was not granted the ability to be home. I was under a load. She moved the entire house by herself. I came home. I was only allowed 3 days after being out 2 months. 3 days. You think about what you can accomplish in 3 days after being gone 2 months. Well, as I'm getting ready to go back out on the third day, my son had come up to me and asked me what he did wrong that I was leaving again. Like, think how powerful that moment is. Hearing your son or daughter or child in general say something like that. It hit me to my core. And these drivers are experiencing this every time. So being aware of that and finding ways to incorporate their family into the excitement, I think that's a missed opportunity we as an industry are failing to hit. And sending that card out not just to the driver but to their family on Driver's Appreciation. Sending maybe a gift card so the driver can take their family out when they go home. Those things are going to help the driver build that relationship and support at home that continues their success within the organization.
Mm-hmm. And I totally agree with that. I think especially like that last one with the gift card. Not that, like, because I was it's one of those things, like when Christmas rolls around, I'm like, oh, I don't know what to buy somebody, here's a gift card. So sometimes it does feel, in your head, but like it feels less authentic. But I think in that way, because that's something that you can do where you can get to everybody. And one thing I'm sure we'll probably cover on future episodes is I'm a huge advocate of the hero mentality. The driver is a hero to the people back home. Whether it's their husband or wife, or if they have kids, or if they take care of extended family, the driver is the hero. The company's job is to support them in what they're trying to accomplish. And at that point, that is one of those things. Like, a t-shirt is cool. Like, I have like numerous shirts from a lot of different people I've worked with, even back in the day. But it's the idea that, like, you come home wearing that t-shirt, that doesn't do anything for your kid.
No.
That doesn't do anything for your wife. But if you can come home, even if it's something simple, you can, whether it's you get like a $5 fuel card, which then you can go put $5 of fuel in your tank, which is nothing essentially, but that's $5 now that you have open that you could put towards taking somebody out when you go home. That alleviates that a little bit. Or you can get that gift card so you can actually take out your family. Yeah. Like when you get home, you can show, hey, I'm the hero. Hey, I did this. This is something they did for me because of what I'm doing for them, which I am doing for you, which sounds convoluted, but it's the idea that the driver should always be the hero. And by giving people the opportunity to be the hero at home, by furthering that is so much more appreciation because you're actually helping them with the load versus just saying, here's a cheeseburger, here's a t-shirt. It doesn't matter, how wonderful you are, your drivers wouldn't drive for you for free.
Yeah, no. No one's going to work to be broke.
So that's what I mean. So it's like by the time you got done paying for the merch, by the time you got done paying for the buns and the like extra 6 things of ketchup
That fed
you're
the
going to have
shop
left
and
over.
the dispatchers.
Right. Yeah. By the time that's true too. But by the time that's said and done, unless like, obviously depending on your size, like that's not that much different of a lift.
You're not wrong there, and there's something to be said about this because oftentimes we're looking at the most extravagant ways to put on social media that we're supporting our drivers, but we're not looking at how are we actually supporting them. And their support not only comes from us, but it does come from home. So being able to have that wholesome approach where everyone's being serviced to support the overall efforts of the driver and make them feel more welcome and make them that hero, which I want to put a big emphasis. They're heroes.
Professional drivers, not just skilled labor.
Yeah. And showing that appreciation in a more holistic environment and keeping in mind that with those drivers and their spouses, their children, the effects that this job has on them, I think being able to incorporate that into what we're doing and keep that in the back of our minds as we're doing it, when we're sitting at those boardroom tables coming up with creative ideas, we should think of the audience that we're trying to appeal to and give thanks to.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that's another thing too is like branding. I love branding. I make a living off of branding, helping people brand things, making videos, taking pictures. Obviously, if someone's on your team and they're loyal and they want, merch, like that's awesome. But all around putting an emphasis on that to a lot of drivers, at least in my experience, like some of them will take it because it's a t-shirt, but they don't really care what's on the t-shirt. Whether it came from one of your vendors or whether it's from your company, it's like, oh, it's a free t-shirt. That's cool. But it's like, I think there's also a lot of emphasis on branded merchandise, which is cool. It's the items themselves, not the branding on the merchandise, though. That is cool. And it's one of those things that's like, is it really showing you appreciation when I'm giving you an item, but also simultaneously trying to turn you into a walking commercial?
Well, it could be worse. There are some people out there that are charging for that merch.
That is true. It's like, it's like, hey, I appreciate you also, but I only appreciate you enough to turn you into a walking billboard.
And I could deduct it from your check, so you don't have to pay cash right now.
Well, the other thing too is like, it's like that shirt, is going to cost between $15 and $20. And then on top of that, what it costs to print, like once you print it and everything, you're looking minimum probably $7, because if you do multiple colors, you're looking at probably $7 a shirt for cost. And at that point, I think a $5 gift card would go so much further.
Well, and there's an added benefit. If you want the drivers to want to wear your merch, that's good. That's a sign you're doing things in the right way. They want to advertise your company. You have a walking advertisement that's speaking highly of you. Now, if you got no drivers coming in and they're like, hey, thank you, but no thank you for the t-shirt, we probably need to put a little more attention on to why that driver might feel that way. So I think having that option out there to give it to them versus charge for it, and I think being able to understand that giving them swag with our brand on it versus giving them the attention for the causes that matter, maybe paid parking because parking's an issue. Maybe it's making sure that they have access to facilities and driving attention to our clients as carriers to make sure that these facilities are clean and accessible for our drivers versus saying, hey, you get the porta potty and it's 0 degrees outside. Good luck. These are the things that are going to matter. These are the things that the drivers are going to perceive that you care. And these are the things that the drivers really need our support on right now.
Yep, I'd agree with that. I 100%. I actually think that's a better direction to go with it too. But one thing I will say to go back though, is the first company that I find out when it comes to Driver Appreciation Week, instead of giving their drivers t-shirts with their company name on it, gives all of their office employees t-shirts with their drivers' faces on it. Wins in my book.
That was pretty, yeah, that's pretty amazing. I hope you guys are listening to this because someone out there is going to take this idea, and I want you to present it to Paul.
Yes, and I will probably come out and take photos if you tell me you're doing it.
You got him on tape saying this, folks.
I did. Yeah. Like that's what I mean, though. It's like it's one of those things, and I guess I was kidding because it's not bad to have merch. And you make a good point. Like I said, if people are super loyal, they want to represent your company. That's great. But it's like like you were talking about with the paid parking and stuff. Like there's so many things that are terrible about this job that no matter how good of a company you are and how well you take care of your drivers, there's certain things you can't eliminate. But there's a lot of things that you can make easier.
Well, and as carriers, they have the drivers to appease, and they also have their clients. So I understand the conflict there, but I think as carriers, we owe it to ourselves and our drivers to raise attention to these key issues. How much easier would a driver's life cycle be within a company if they had those facilities arranged on the front end before a client was onboarded for a carrier to deliver to? How much easier would it be if a company paid that driver for parking so that they could have a guaranteed spot rather than driving around 2 hours and trying to shut down 2 hours earlier out of their hours of service to find that parking spot? I've been there. I was actually taught by my trainer to start looking an hour and a half before your clock runs out. What if I could drive that out and know I have a spot over here, so I need to achieve that spot?
Mm-hmm. And it would up production.
Yeah, it would up production. It would overall be an improvement on the overall driver experience. There's so many things that we can do as an industry to make this environment better for our drivers, for ourselves. I think we owe it to ourselves to have those hard discussions, which is why I'm super excited to have this discussion with you today.
Yeah, man. No, and I think it's going to be great touching on a lot of hard subjects. But also, I mean, the other thing, too, is you're great. I'm pretty cool. But there's a lot of other people out there with a lot of other opinions who hold just as much, if not sometimes more weight than we do. So I think it's about time that we bring on our first guest.
You know, I'm glad that you prompted me to do that because I got a couple of special surprises for us today. So today we have Skip Lawrence on the phone, and he's one of our road heroes that we're talking about. And I thought it was important to incorporate him into driver appreciation because who better to talk to about driver appreciation than the drivers themselves? So Skip, how you doing today, bud? Welcome to the show.
I'm wonderful. Thank you for inviting me. I'm doing great. How you doing today?
Oh, another day, another dollar, brother.
At least you get $1. I only get 60 cents.
So, hey, let's talk about that a little bit. You know, you're on the road. How long do you stay out?
Considering I stay out for about 4 or 5 months, sometimes a little longer, sometimes a little less. I stay out until my body says, get out the truck.
Oh, nice. And so how long you been doing this?
4 years now.
4 years. So when we're talking about Driver Appreciation Week this week, and that's the topic of today's show, can you tell me what's important to you as a driver? What things that you see that you like? What things you may not see that you want to see?
I think the most important thing is communication. And I find that to be one of the main issues out here on the road for some of us drivers is the communication between the dispatchers, a.k.a. driver managers, and the drivers. That's pretty much how I feel out here. Appreciative-wise, I just appreciate out here, and, you know, when they get us what we need and what we want, then we go from there.
Nice. So for you, communication, making your life easier on the road is one of the big takeaways that you'd like to see incorporated into this big show of appreciation.
Oh, definitely. Being prior military, you know, we get our orders and we execute, and, you know, we do what we got to do to get executed. Any issues, we report back to our COs, and that's kind of how I look at it in the civilian sector, and sometimes it can be very challenging.
All right. So did you get to attend any of those fun barbecues everyone's throwing this week?
Oh, God, I'm on the road. How can I attend the barbecue if I'm on the road?
All right, fair enough. The wheels ain't turning, you're not earning, right?
Right.
All right. So when we're talking driver's appreciation, you know, I've been in that job. You and I have had plenty of discussions, driver to driver, on this. When we're talking this hard job that you guys do, and you stay out pretty lengthy amount of time, which I think carriers are going to be knocking on your door here shortly after this call. Tell me what's important. What changes do you want to see? What awareness do you want to bring to any issues or pain points that you have while you're on the road?
As I say before, communication is key. The few companies that I have the honor to work with, the communication always seemed to be the hassle and detention pay. For some reason, detention pay is not paid for a lot of companies out here, and I don't think that's fair. You know, we're in these trucks day in, day out, and when we get to a shipper or receiver, and, you know, we scheduled to be there at 1 o'clock or 1300, and we don't get out there until 8 o'clock that night, but most times our DMs and our dispatchers are gone home to their families, and we're still stuck out here, and they're trying to get a hold of them to let them know what's going on or what's happening. It's a challenge. And that is very frustrating after a while. You don't feel like you feel used, and you feel used, just to be nice about it.
Yeah, and that's sad that you feel that way, bud, because when we're talking driver appreciation, we're talking you heroes. we're talking about the things that you wish you saw more of. Can you tell me some of the things that you really enjoyed during this week? Things that you might see on the road, things that the carriers might be doing. Is there anything that really strikes you as it meant a lot?
Well, it's nice to when you walk into a truck stop and you see the signs that said, "Thank you, drivers, appreciate you." That's nice. That's always good to hear positive feedback from a customer or whatever the case might be. I just dropped off at a customer this morning, and as I went to check out through security, I got a bag of cookies, and it was a very nice thank you for all that you do. You know, here's a little small of appreciation, which is a little small bag of cookies. So
All right,
that's
so
always nice to hear.
I got to ask you the big question now. What type of cookies?
They were Famous Amos chocolate chip bite-sized cookies. Yeah.
Making Paul hungry over
Yeah.
here.
It's about lunchtime for me.
Well, Skip, you've been doing this a long time already, and you stay out a lengthy period of time. So I want to personally extend my thanks to you. I've been thankful for the years that I've known you, being able to have these hard conversations with each other, and I'm really thankful for everything you do. So from myself and Cents Per Mile and everyone over here, thank you.
Well, thank you. It means a lot to me to hear that from you, especially you. You know, we're paramilitary, so when someone says good job or you get an attaboy, as I say, it's always it makes the job better. It makes the job easier, and I do appreciate that. Thank you, guys.
Well, we appreciate you. You be safe out there. Is there anyone you want to give a shout out to before I let you go?
Oh, just a shout out to my boy Charles. You know, thank you for being who he is. Very good guy. Prior military like myself. We like meat and potatoes, and that's something that Charles does not do. He does not give you meat and potatoes. He gives you straight out exactly what's going on. That's what I like. So that's my shout out. My shout out is to you, Charles.
Well, I appreciate you, Skip. You be safe out there.
Thank you, sir. I'm hope to hear from you soon.
All right, take care, brother. Our next guest is Dave Abels with AFC Transport. Dave, welcome to the show.
Hey, how you guys doing? Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Our topic today is driver's appreciation, and we wanted your take from a carrier standpoint on what you're doing and what you think people should be doing for Driver's Appreciation Week.
Sure will. Thanks for having me today, Charles. Driver appreciation is a big thing for everyone in our industry, specifically for us here at AFC. It's an opportunity for the drivers to re-engage with people they don't get an opportunity to see in person all the time. So we spend a lot of time talking to the drivers. We're outside grilling with them each day. We've got great giveaways from sets of steer tires to televisions to dollar amount gifts and different things. But really, for me personally, as the president and chief operating officer, I sit down with the drivers and I talk and I listen. And then this week, I've even actually taken guys in to go over our new pay packages with them and got into details that sometimes they don't get. They might get a bullet point here. We heard this or we heard that. Tell me the truth. And it's an opportunity to sit down and be able to engage and listen and answer their questions.
Dave, when we're talking driver appreciation, our earlier guest was a driver, and he said one of the biggest struggles that he faces on the road is lack of communication. Can you tell me what you guys do to make sure that the communication lines are clear with your drivers?
Sure will. And, cool for me, I started out as a truck driver, so I kind of went through that side of it as well. And right, communication's a big thing because you get snippets of information, and then you talk to other drivers who have a different snippet of that information, and you try to compile it together. So again, during driver appreciation, that's why it's so critical to listen and engage with the drivers and contractors that are at your locations and tell them the entire thing. We set up an ambassador program for just that too. So we have drivers out on the road that understand what the company's cultural things are, what our pay packages are, what we do to assist drivers in need, what kind of freight we have, all those things. We put together those teams of drivers out on the road to be able to help. Times like this are critical to listen, and I keep stressing that, but that's what the most important thing is. And that shows appreciation in itself, just the fact that you'll sit there and listen to them.
Kind of what you said goes a lot with a lot of the things that we had said previously before we brought on the driver, and then after bringing on the driver, now talking to you. Communication has been there the whole time. But one thing that we kind of talked about was making the driver the hero and not the company. The company is something to help the driver accomplish their goals, whether it be at home or financially or just however. So can you kind of speak to your perspective as a carrier? Is it more important to make, in your case, AFC the hero, or is it more important to make the driver the hero and AFC is just a larger support system to help them accomplish those things?
That's a great question, and it's interesting too. So I think the driver's obviously the hero in this all, but I also like to tie the organization in, because it's like I bring dispatch down to have these discussions with me as well. Because the driver's a great individual, a dispatcher's a great individual, but you pair them up and they're amazing, right? So the driver is very important. They are definitely the highway hero, but there's a hidden group that does that maintenance on that truck, that gets those loads for them, that helps them when they're broke down, and that. So tying it all together is really, to me, what's the most important factor, and they're all heroes. Everybody in our business, we were there during COVID, buddy. We were out there when everybody else was at home, and we were all in our offices still working in dispatching trucks, and the drivers were out there on the road with all the truck stops closed and with rest areas closed. They're the heroes. We're the heroes. We're all in this together.
Well, Dave, I appreciate you coming on the show. I know it's a busy week, and you guys are putting your best foot forward for your drivers, and I want to give you a big thank you for everything you're doing on that front. And
thank you very much
carving out
for
some
having
time.
me, and we love what you guys are doing too. So you're doing a great job, and thanks for having me.
All right, thank you, Dave.
Well, and I think it's cool that I think throughout all of that communication became a reoccurring theme. Because that was even one thing that I would always say when I would talk to drivers on the phone when I was recruiting is, Yogi Berra, who used to play for the Yankees, used to always have like these ridiculous, he would take cliches and just say them in the weirdest ways, but they would still somehow make sense. And I mean, in that fashion, I would always say, being a truck driver is 100% driving and 100% communication. That doesn't make sense when you add it up, but that makes sense because, if you don't have that communication, it doesn't work out. And, like a lot of people do run into that situation where your dispatcher can become a gatekeeper if you're working, with less desirable people. So it was really nice to hear Dave talk about how they are putting an emphasis on communication like that.
Yeah, and the practicality of what they're giving out to improve upon the overall driver experience within the organization, as well as bringing attention to the supporting roles that are going in to help and improve upon that experience. I think it's a unique take from a carrier's perspective on this one.
Well, in summation, how do you feel about Driver Appreciation Week?
So, when I'm taking everything that we just heard, be it Skip or Dave from the carrier side, Skip being on the driver's side, and we're combining it all as a takeaway, I think there was one common thing that we got out of this: communication. The carriers are using their communication to emphasize their appreciation for the driver and bring awareness to the things that they think should be touched upon. And with the driver, Skip in this particular instance, communication was the one thing he's asking for. So if I was a carrier and a listener on today's show, I would be taking away that we need to focus on communication, communicating what's important, communicating those expectations, and more or less opening the lines of communication, if you haven't already done so, to incorporate your driver's feedback so you can make active moves in the right direction to retain those drivers and show their ultimate appreciation in this week and every week, to be quite honest, going forward.
One thing that I thought was super cool about that too was, kind of back to the hero thing is like, and I even said it with them on the phone, is that the fact that they're giving away practical stuff, like they're talking about giving out new steer tires, new, insert here versus just like shirts and stuff. But, after talking to Skip, like communication is such a big deal. And it's one of those things where I think, having been on driver appreciation boards and whatnot, it's one of those things, you think like, oh, what kind of food can we put out that would be different? Like how can we wrap people in, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, they both made a great point, like that when you're doing your job and you're already doing a job that doesn't involve a lot of communication, there isn't a lot of interaction. And, obviously I'm sure we'll probably talk about it on a future episode, but isolationism on the road is a huge topic. It's a huge task. It's a huge, probably one of the biggest negatives of the job, despite like the weird ways that we pay drivers. But
Next episode.
Not to make light of it, but the idea that like in that situation, sometimes, whether you're in an office or if you're in, the driver's seat, like a lot of times you don't know if you're doing good if no one tells you. You don't know that you're doing great. You don't know where you stand in things. You're just there trying to make it happen. And simply, I guess in summation, communicating with your drivers, letting them know that they're doing good, showing them the effect that they're having. You know, because you can tell them thank you all day, but these are an amazing group of people who take super pride in their work. And if you can show them how much they mean to you based on what they've done, that probably means more than just about anything. But you could speak to that better, you know, being a driver or like, you know, like having been one and like, you know, what you talked about with that company, what they did for you.
Yeah, and I think your takeaway on this was spot on, to be quite honest with you. A lot of times when we're talking about showing thanks to our drivers and we're trying to come up with creative ways to set ourselves aside from the pack, we lose sight on the end goal, the drivers. That's our audience we're trying to appeal to. So when you're going into Drivers Appreciation Week or the next Drivers Appreciation Week or just every day, showing thanks and understanding the audience you're trying to appeal to and who we're giving thanks to and the sacrifices that are made to be on that road. The isolation, the being away from your family, your loved ones, the time to think when you're in that small rolling box all day. These are things often lost in translation when we're going through the processes on the carrier side. So keeping that in mind and ways to improve upon that experience and make it a more positive environment for the drivers, these are where we're going to win as carriers and win over our drivers and show them the ultimate appreciation.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are pretty clear takeaways. Those are, you know, we got some great insight today, I feel like.
I appreciate all of our guests, both Skip and Dave. Thank you very much for participating in this, and until next time.